Say good morning, church. As my cousin and my brother will tell you, I was born and raised at Great Tabernacle Missionary Baptist Church, located in Chicago, Illinois, and I understood this thing. That is what I'm used to, and that's what I'm expecting here. So good morning, family. First, giving honor to God, Reverend Davenport, Madam First Lady, church, family, and friends, and my family, my wife, Kara, my daughter, Brooklyn, my brother, Brett, sister-in-law, Leslie, my cousin, Felix and Jill, my auntie, Leslie's mom, where's she at? Where's she, Sherry? Hey, Miss Sherry, I see you. And all those other family and friends that came to support me in this opportunity to give this presentation. As Reverend Davenport and I were bantering back and forth, he said I was going to preach today. But I'll call it a presentation and let you all decide what it's going to be. So I want to express my gratitude and the invitation, Reverend Davenport, for inviting me here. And what many of you may not know is that we've been talking about me coming here for several years to come and preach / do a presentation. But for one reason or another, it just hadn't worked out. But for some reason or another, today is the day. And my charge as presented to me from Reverend Davenport was to come and give some type of message about Black History Month, but also sprinkle in there some words of inspiration. And what he further confirmed for me is that I can take all the time that I need. As long as it's less than 20 minutes. And so when I was invited here, and this was in, I believe, November, at some time prior to Thanksgiving, a word came to me. Now, let me be very clear, because when I ever hear someone say that a word came to them, I'm a little suspicious about how that came to pass. And what does that really mean? And I'll share for you what it means to me. Is that as I sat at my desk several weeks ago and was thinking about what is the outline? Because as a trial lawyer, I prepare outlines and I am ready to do a presentation based upon facts and those things that inspire me. And as I sat at my computer, something came over me, and it is as if, the best I can explain it, is as if I was in a zone. And I felt it become very quiet, and I was at peace, and then words came to me like poetry. And I was able to type them out on my computer, 6 to 7 sentences with absolute ease without even thinking. And then as quick as that moment came, it left. And I looked at the 6 or 7 sentences that was there on my computer, and a theme resonated with me very clearly. And that message was very clear at that moment. And so when I say a word came to me, that was the process. So take it for what you will, but that's how it came. And as over the weeks, the message has become more refined in its essence and in its meaning, but the theme remained the same. And it was made very clear to me, even in my drive here this morning, that the message that I'm going to present, someone here, whether you're here physically present or watching through the Zoom media platform, someone needs to hear this. And so it is with love and in the spirit of truth that I present these words. As I was given the charge to talk about Black history, it is, in my opinion, summarized in the verse that Reverend Davenport read during the introductions. And it's summarized, again, in my opinion, in 2 Corinthians 4, 7 through 9. And it sums up in that it reads, "But we have this treasure in jars of clay to show that this all-surpassing power is from God and not from us. We are pressed hard on every side, but not crushed. perplexed, but not in despair, persecuted, but not abandoned, struck down, but not destroyed. And as we and as I reflect upon the history of Black Americans in this country, we are bloodied, but unbowed. Now, that phrase, bloodied, but unbowed, comes from a poem that is very important to me and perhaps very important to many of you as well. It is a poem written by a person by the name of William Ernest Henley. And it comes from a poem called Invictus. Out of the night that covers me, black as a pit from pole to pole, I thank whatever gods may be from my unconquerable soul. In the fell clutch of circumstance, I have not winced nor cried aloud, but under the bludgeoning of chance, my head is bloodied, but unbowed. Beyond this place of wrath and tears looms the horror of the shade, and yet the menace of the years finds and shall find me unafraid. It matters not how straight the gate, nor hard charge with punishment the scroll, for I am the master of my fate. I am the captain of my soul. Bloodied, but unbowed. Now, William Ernest Henley wrote that poem to show how a person can choose to remain unbowed, relentless, unyielding, defiant, even as they face overwhelming circumstances. Bloodied, but unbowed. That is the spirit of Invictus. Now, in reflecting on the arc of American history, which is also Black American history, in my opinion, we must start with the crossings of the ocean to the land unknown, where we were secured by chains in the bottom of ships, treated in ways that were inhumane by any and all measurement or standard. Yet we endured the circumstances, bloodied, but unbowed. As we continue to examine history, we go from the slave ships to work in the cotton and tobacco fields under unimaginable conditions. We were seen as 3/5 of a human being and given scraps of food to eat. Yet we turned those scraps of food into food that nourished us. I'm going to pause here because I see you all looking at me, and what we're not going to do is act like y'all never had chitlins before. Like y'all don't know what I'm talking about. Like y'all never had hog head cheese, pickled pig feet. Somebody right now has neck bones simmering on the stove, hoping that we don't go too long so their house don't burn down. We turned the scraps of food into food that provided us nourishment. Not only did we turn those scraps into nourishment, but while in the fields, we also sang songs to the heavens, using lyrics from the book of Psalms that encouraged us. I love the Lord. He heard my cry. Bloodied, but unbowed. The spirit of Invictus. We continue our journey through the arc of history to a time of Reconstruction, which is the time period where in this country, they were rebuilding an infrastructure to make room for the freed Black slaves. While we may have been removed from the chains of bondage, we were still under the laws and rules that did not apply to us equally. We were living under the thumb of what they call the Jim Crow laws, where we were relegated as third-class citizens, where there are anti-Black laws that were the norm in many parts of our country. where many people were taught in schools that by nature, people that had black and brown skin were intellectually and culturally inferior to others. And beyond the laws that had been put in place themselves, there were also specific etiquettes and norms that we lived by. Etiquettes and norms that needed to be followed, such examples of Black people were not allowed to show affection in public because it offended whites. Whites did not provide the common courtesy to Blacks by simply giving them titles of respect, such as Mr., Miss, or Mrs. And they were referred only as their first name. Customs and etiquettes, where if you are at an intersection and you are operating a vehicle or a carriage and you were Black, regardless of who arrived at the intersection first, the person with white skin always had the right of way. These laws and these etiquettes were enforced by fear, by intimidation, by violence, and also by lynchings. Many people claimed in support of lynchings that lynchings were an appropriate supplement, while distasteful, an appropriate supplement to the criminal justice system. But through it all, we were reminded by the scripture that reads, "Eyes have not seen, nor have your ears heard the things that God has had in store for you." And we remained bloodied, but unbowed. The spirit of Invictus. Now, as our families traveled from the dirt roads of the South to the paved city streets of the red-lined communities throughout our country, whether it be Chicago, Los Angeles, and even here in Seattle, Washington, we were told that there were communities where we could not live. The government had rules put in place that ensured financial resources were not given to Black communities. Yet through it all, we found the strength in each other and forming our own institutions. Just like People's Institutional Baptist Church that was formed in 1942. We found ways not only to survive, but also to thrive in spite of all that they attempted to do. And as we continued to fight against injustices that plagued our communities at the time, we remained bloodied, but unbound. And as the historical review progresses from the paved city streets, we now arrived to the information superhighway. And how now, even in the present day, with all of these social and technological advancements, we are still dealing with many of the same issues as we have in the past, only dressed a little bit differently. We're still dealing with violence at the hands of the police. We are still dealing with unequal treatment in healthcare. We are still faced with the lack of representation in many of the institutions and companies that have direct influence on the way in which we live our lives each and every day. And when I grow weary of this fight, I'm continually reminded of the song that I heard just about every Sunday in my household growing up. The song from the Reverend James Cleveland. I don't feel no ways tired. I've come too far from where I started from. Nobody told me the road would be easy. I don't believe he brought me this far to leave me. Bloodied, yet still unbowed, the spirit of Invictus. So, Reverend Davenport, I know you're sitting there thinking, okay, I told you to give some words of inspiration. What you're doing now is you're bringing us down, reminding us of the past and the challenges of the present. But let me be very clear to Reverend Davenport and all those others who are waiting for the words of inspiration. The words of inspiration have always been here. The acts of inspiration have always been here. They've simply been hiding in plain sight. They've been hiding in the words of the scripture from 2 Corinthians. But the words of inspiration and the acts of inspiration have always been here. And let me be very clear, Reverend Davenport, listen. Throughout history, we have been held in captivity. We have been given scraps of food to eat. We have been lynched. We have been told we are less than. We have been told where we could and could not live. We have been given substandard schools and educational opportunities. We have been told that we are 3/5 of a person. We have been told that we are not intelligent. We are not smart. We do not belong. We were not even given the simple due respect of being called Mr., Mrs., or Miss. But throughout history, we have been hard pressed on every side, but not crushed. We have been perplexed, but not in despair. We have continually been persecuted, but not abandoned. We have been struck down, but we remain standing. But through it all, look at us now. Look at us now. Look at us now. We, at this very moment, at this very time, are the realities of when our forefathers and our foremothers were told their eyes have not seen and their ears have not heard the things that God has in store. We are that reality. We are the responses to the cries that were saying to the heavens. It is each and every one of us. We have been bloodied, but we must continue to remain unbowed. Our history has shown us that we must continue to live with the spirit of Invictus. And as we continue to change the course of history, the children who have yet to be born will look at what we have done and will be inspired to stand strong against the issues of their day. We must continue to be no ways tired. We've come too far from where we started from. Nobody told us the road would be easy. We must continue to believe that He did not bring us this far to leave us.